Chapter 34. Rhea's gaze at Oliver dropped as the clones moved in. The striped clone was the first to strike. Rhea ran in, fists waving and screaming. Stripey's feet thudded against the floor. He lashed out with a skillful blow and glanced across Dylan's face. Dylan spun around and, half dazed, lashed out with his arms, attempting to hit the first thing he saw. Unfortunately for him, Zack was the first thing that Dylan's fists contacted. In a slow-motion wobble, the skin across Zack's face rippled as it temporarily enveloped Dylan's fist. "Wow, that hurt!" screamed Zack, and he ducked as another fist came towards him, this time from another clone. Meanwhile, Rhea was taking on 4 at once. Her karate moves were sending them flying as she did sidekicks and punches, and clones were being pushed out of her way in the same way that pins went down after being hit by a bowling ball. Dylan stood completely gobsmacked as she kicked and punched clone after clone in a relentless pursuit of perfection, almost if she was going for a trophy at the end of this. He felt she was worthy of a medal or something. Another clone hurtled towards Zack. This one had spotted skin and striped hair, and Zack wondered what on earth must have been wrong with the cell print to create such a misfit. The spiked hair made this clone look taller and scarier, but the fact that he had picked up a pipe and was swinging it at Zack made him look terrifying. The pipe came within inches of his legs, and Zack jumped clear of it before it could knock his legs from beneath him. Dylan, completely in awe with the spectacle of Rhea's fighting, didn't see the foot from the long-haired clone with 3 legs, and as it hit him in the stomach, he felt himself buckle under his weight as he collapsed to the floor, all the wind knocked out of him. "No!" shouted Zack as he pushed through the crowd in a futile attempt to help his brother. It was pointless, though, as pointless as a fish climbing a tree. Dylan lay on the floor helpless, dribbling and looking upwards as the 3-legged freak was smacked in the face by the cross-eyed clone who stood next to him. "Oops," said Cross-Eyes sarcastically, who ended up eating a fist from 3 legs with a big smile on his face. Stripey laughed as Cross-Eyes went down to the floor, and Rhea seized the opportunity to bang Stripey straight on the nose, and he joined the pile of clones on the floor, knocked out cold. "Yeah, how'd you like those apples?" called out Dylan as he got to his feet. Oliver looked on and laughed as he watched what was going on. His clone minions were no match for their 3 opponents, although Rhea was giving them a run for their money. The clones surrounded Rhea in a big circle, and they were egging each other on to fight her. "Go on, she's just a girl," said a short one to a green clone. "You've got to be kidding me," came the reply. One big beefy guy came through the crowd, and a line parted, letting him through. Zack looked at Dylan. "We need to help, otherwise she's toast," he said. The beefy clone opened his mouth and gave a roar that made Dylan jump. "You're mine," he said in a high-pitched voice. Zack coughed and laughed at the same time, the beefy guy's voice catching him by surprise. His face went red with anger as the rage built up inside him, and he pushed forward, knocking clones left and right like a bowling ball, flattening a bunch of pins when you hit a strike as he barged through them. Rhea stood her ground and watched as he stopped. Dylan, now back on his feet, called out, "Get out of there, Rhea!" Her gaze was fixed on the beefy guy as he beat his muscled chest, then launched forwards towards her. Another slow-motion moment as the sounds became deeper and slower. Fists and legs moved at 1/10 of the speed, and Beefy's speed had reduced as he reached Rhea. In a fraction of a second, Beefy launched across the room. His body slowly left the ground, and with arms stretched, It felt like several seconds for him to reach her. He watched and shouted. The sounds left his lips like a guttural war cry, too slow to be heard by human ears, all the time calling, "No!" Just as Beefy's fist touched Rhea's hair, her coordinated body sensed his oncoming attack. She ducked onto one knee, and as his body flew past her head, she reached up with a fist right in the family jewels. Time sped up, and in the next moment, Beefy was doubled in pain on the floor behind Rhea, with the professor's assistant knelt on the floor on one leg, her fist raised and her head held high. Dylan blinked and missed it all. "Get off me, you idiot!" shouted a voice. Beneath the pile of hurting clones was Oliver, flattened by the big man. He pushed Beefy aside and shouted, "Get me out of here!" Several clones grabbed his arms as others made a path through the crowd, and they picked Oliver up and ushered him to safety. Oliver pointed at Rhea, Dylan and Zack. "Kill them!" Dylan looked around him. There were clones everywhere. He was tired from fighting, and there was no way they were going to win this. Zack was drained of energy too, and Rhea was only fighting 2 clones at once instead of the 4 at the beginning of the brawl, so it wouldn't be too long before she was done. Zack, seeing the desperation on his brother's face and their impending loss, dropped to his knees in sheer exhaustion and was about to give himself to the crowd of clones when something quite unexpected happened. Dylan thrust his fist in the air, grasping something. "Look what I found," he said, holding up the nanogun. "Rhea, you're our best bet," shouted Dylan. He looked at Zack. "Sorry, bro, but we have to be realistic about this." His brother made a gesture to show he was okay with it. Rhea carried on, not listening. She was completely in the zone, mustering up all the energy she could to fight the 2 clones she was battling. Oliver grinned. "And what are you going to do with that? They're all under my voice control," he said. Zack stood up, narrowly missing a swinging fist and ducking as another foot came towards his face. Rhea had finished fighting her clones now and shouted out, "What did you find, Dylan?" He waved his arm with the gun in it, and she pushed through the crowd towards him. Rhea was almost within several feet when a clone kicked the gun out of Dylan's hand and he dropped it onto the floor. "Ha!" said Oliver, with a look of complete glee on his face. "Zack, can you reach your brother?" shouted Rhea. He attempted to go forwards towards Dylan, but was thrown to the floor and ended up at the bottom of a pile of clones, all pummeling him. Dylan lost sight of Zack and the gun, and all he could see was Rhea, now within arm's reach, and what seemed like an enormous sea of clones, with wave upon wave of them surging forwards. As Rhea reached Dylan, more attackers unexpectedly parted in a large 360-degree ripple, knocking each other flat, and Zack stood up high with a gun in his hand as they all lay dazed, completely surprised by what had just happened. The sudden rush of adrenaline from picking up the gun was enough to turn him into one of those superhuman types he had seen on TV. He looked at the gun's LCD readout. Only 2 bullets left. Aiming the weapon at Oliver, he pulled the trigger. The bullet flew across the room. It whizzed past Stripey, Three Legs, Beefy, the girl clone, and hundreds of others. And Dylan, Zack, and Rhea watched with anticipation as it flew through the air. It smashed on the wall behind Oliver and became a million pieces, disintegrating into a small dust cloud. "Try again," Rhea called out. Closing one eye, he held the pistol up and squeezed gently. There was hardly any recoil, and the bullet hit the target straight away. "And what do you expect me to do now?" asked Oliver. "Stop moving!" shouted Zack. He thought for a moment and then issued a second order. "Now, repeat after me. I want all clones to stop fighting and stand to attention." Oliver's face dropped as the nanobots got to work on his nervous system, attaching themselves to his brain and leaving him completely at the mercy of the orders that Zack had given him. "I want all clones to stop fighting and stand to attention," called out Oliver. Immediately and in unison, the entire troop came to a halt, and each clone stood ready, chins up, chest out, arms by their side and feet together, waiting for their next orders. Except for the one with green hair, who fell over and planked on the floor. "Keep fighting!" called out Oliver. "Shut up!" ordered Zack. Oliver went silent, and the look on his face dropped even more. "Now, repeat the order I just gave you." Once more, the clones came to attention, and the whole place became silent. "Finally, I was getting a headache," said Dylan. "Now, repeat this. Safety protocols off." Without any hesitation, Oliver begrudgingly repeated the order, and all the clones shouted, "Safety protocols off. Now tell them to self-terminate." Oliver called out the order, and within seconds each clone started to dissolve. Some dissolved straight away with a splash as if a water balloon had burst, and some more slowly with limbs dropping off at the joints, like zombies who had reached their expiration date. Within a minute, everywhere around them was a sea of red goo, with the odd strand of green hair, and only Rhea, Zack, Dylan and Oliver were left standing. The room smelled of the sweet smell of bacon. Zack watched Oliver, ready to give the next order, but he didn't have to. Oliver was already melting into puddles from the feet upwards, as if he were made of metal and had stepped into hot lava. Dylan watched as Oliver's feet disappeared and gravity pulled Oliver downwards. His ankles were next, then his knees. An arm dropped off and splashed into liquid as it hit the floor, and Oliver looked at it in horror, knowing there was nothing he could do about it. "You can talk now," said Zack. "Any last words?" asked Rhea. "You haven't won, and you haven't seen the last of me," replied Oliver. What remained of his body exploded, spraying ovine DNA everywhere, and Rhea, Dylan and Zack all got covered in the sludge. Dylan looked at Zack and high-fived him, smiling at each other. "I suppose I have to clear this lot up?" asked Dylan. "Nah, let someone else do it. We need to get Dad," replied Zack with a grin.